long time no see. It's been a while. We've had a busy end of summer. You know, my son, we helped move him in to his dorm. And so that's just weird, having both of my kids away from home. And just different things we had to wrap up, and just spending as much time with him as we could. I haven't gotten around to doing this in a while, but I've been really busy with knitting stuff too. A test knit, I finished one test knit, started another. I'm doing 2 knit-alongs right now with other groups. And here's my plum. My ends aren't woven in yet because I had to kick the AC up just to wear this for you guys. It's so miserably hot. I didn't want to take photos. I take them all outdoors usually because it's just dark in my home, and cramped then if you're going to bring in lights to make it brighter. Like even right now I have lights in this room, but there is no space to walk because of it, because it's a tiny room. So anyway, I've been waiting to take photos and post about it on my blog until I could just bear the thought of wearing it in this heat. But I will show you, I'm wearing the straight part of the neckline here, and you know there is a V-neck back. I'll try to show it a little bit. You can see super wide, oversized fit. The cabling of the sleeve and the side. I got just the fit I wanted. It's really oversized and comfy and big. I love it. And then, you know, my hormones are so crazy. Were I to gain a little weight, lose a little weight, I think it will still work because I've seen it both more fitted and even more oversized, and it looks great. So that was good. That was a win, I think. And one thing about turning up the AC to wear this, to show you, the AC's loud, so I hope that you'll be able to hear me. I may have to stop the camera and just check and make sure at some point. So let me just get right into it. I usually watch what I'm doing and then redo it. I can't do that anymore. I have to just be a little more off the cuff, and I think you guys understand. Especially after some of the comments this week. I know you understand. I got 3 or actually 5 responses to talk about the question I asked you, which was, have you ever used your crafting or knitting to cross like a social barrier or some kind of cultural barrier with another person? And I gave, in the last episode, number 16, I gave an example, a really stark example from my life, but I also mentioned that I'm always asked about my knitting if I pull it out in a doctor's office. And I even admitted to someone, there was a time there where I was at doctor's offices like every week. I just was worn out, and I kind of wanted to escape in the quiet of an office. My grandfather's questions would often stop if we were in a lobby or a waiting room, and he would be a little more, for a while, he would be kind of, you know, have a cup of coffee or be interested in something. My grandmother the same way. There was news on or things to look at, and I thought, I'll just knit just a few minutes. I just want to rest my brain. And then somebody would start talking to me. I used to crochet, and it didn't make me angry at all. But it did just make me feel like, man, I just want to be a wallflower here, you know? But I realized after that happened several times that, you know, this is an opportunity to connect with another human being. My world was so small at the time. My little immediate family, my grandparents, and that was pretty much it. And I'd see people at church on Sunday, but we didn't get real communicative, you know? This was an opportunity to have a slightly broadened social circle, even if it's just chance meetings, you know. I wasn't very grateful for those moments. So I tried to look at it as an opportunity, and it did change my outlook. And not only that, how often, really, I don't know about you guys, if you live somewhere where there's lots of people knitting in your life, or it's cold, you may have people around you talking about crafts all the time, but knitting is not a thing here. And so no one ever really asks. And no one ever really asks with like really interested, like, what is that you're making, really? And like they would even consider doing it, or, so I don't have interest shown in what I do very often. So why not be grateful for that? So I tried to look at it that way, and it was always so much more pleasant. And so anyway, Carmen had mentioned that she was going to start looking for opportunities to pull her knitting out in public and see what happens. And then Melanie of Braid and Tinker podcast, she said that every time she pulls it out, she gets a reaction that people just act like she's performing alchemy, with her needles. It's just so cool to them. Let me see what you guys said here. See, it's much better when I think more before I film. Little Kitten said that she really appreciates every time a knitter or crafter talks about how their mother or grandmother helped them to learn, that it kind of reinforces those family domestic crafts across generations, and that definitely does bridge age gaps, and barriers. So she likes hearing about different people's stories about how they learned to knit. And Poppy Pipkin had left a message that she was actually on a flight home to Australia, and she's in her 50s, and she's sitting next to a young man in his 20s, and she's knitting, like on a Georgetown cardigan, which is a great pattern, right? Hannah Fettig, I think. And he was so interested in what she was doing, genuinely interested, and they started talking about it. He just thought it was so neat that she could create her own clothing that way. He said his granny used to knit, and then they find through the course of conversation they have so much in common. And that might never have happened had she not pulled out her knitting. And so by the time the flight ended, he was thinking he might have his granny show him how to do it, because he thought it was kind of neat to make something like that. So it reinforced that idea that, knitting and crafting in general can help cross a barrier, and that was a gender barrier, which, sometimes we feel. Definitely an age gap. So I thought that was pretty neat. And Sarah W., I really liked what you said. It was something I hadn't thought about, that she found that other than just brightening someone's day, if they saw her knitting in a medical building or a waiting room, they would say, oh, that just makes me smile, She found that when she was knitting with her mother, it brought to mind, her mother had dementia, and it just kind of crossed the dementia barrier. The colors made her mother think of different things, and she would begin having memories and sharing them with Sarah. And then once she put the knitting in her mother's hands, and she was able to, she got her started, and her mother remembered all the movements and could do it. So those little moments that bring a person back to themselves, and allow her mother to communicate. Whereas I'm not sure what stage she was at with her dementia, but any little moment where someone comes to themselves and sees their relatives, loved ones, and can communicate with them is so special and precious. I thought that was a great example of handcrafts crossing barriers. My grandfather did not really have a handcraft that could be done like sitting, at least done safely. And I really regret that. Some sort of hobby that would let, a lot of people with dementia have busy hands and frustration and anxiety. And so having your hands busy is very soothing. I mean, you guys know, if you forget your knitting and you have to sit through a boring movie because your family wants to see it, that's maddening, right? You want to at least have your hands busy. It just helps use part of that brain and you spend some of that extra energy inside of you. He didn't have anything like that. When he first started to feel the effects of dementia and he knew what was happening, he was very frustrated. He thought about things he could do and he just couldn't remember how. And I was really, at the time, helping them. My grandmother had other health problems, you know, and trying to make food for their dinner and I don't know, just be helpful in different ways. I never came up with anything that he could do safely, you know, I mean, really at all at the time. He used to take Coke cans and cut them in a certain way to make like little pinwheels and mobiles and things, little things that spin in the wind, say in your garden. But he didn't remember how. And I might have looked up plans and printed them out for him, but he couldn't do it. And I couldn't do it. So that didn't really happen. And later, when they were in assisted living, smoking his pipe was relaxing for him. He would hold it, he would light it, he would put the tobacco in, tamp it down, light it, puff, and just play with that lighter over and over. But eventually that became dangerous. There was a danger of fire. So he couldn't even do that. And I thought, oh, I wish there was some sort of handcraft that didn't involve blades that he could have done. So the knitting, crochet, any sort of fiber art, yeah, that's a really great idea to use with dementia patients or just anyone who's getting a little older and can't do other things. But if you can sit upright, if you can move your hands, you know. So anyway, I appreciated those answers, you guys. So here's my plum, all blocked, ready to go. I've been busy, like I said, with a couple of knit-alongs. One that I joined was the Floozy knit-along that Libby of Truly Myrtle is hosting. You know, her Floozy cardigan pattern came out. Let me pull that up. I have a bunch of patterns pulled up for you guys, but I didn't have that one ready. Let's see if I can. Here we go. Oh, it's so nice. Now this is a very fitted version. I'm doing it to have a little more ease, but I still have a slightly tighter gauge at the moment, just slightly, than the pattern, though I usually loosen up. So I should have something between the fit of this and the more oversized one that's got like 3 or 4 inches of ease. So anyway, I feel like that's a safe bet because if I knit this and it's this fitted, that's great. I have nothing fitted anymore. Not, you know, that fits fitted. I have things that don't fit anymore and they're ridiculously tight. But so what I'm doing, I got one of the Yarn Floozy kits. So the cardigan is named after the yarn. Yarn Floozy is a dyer I've never heard of. It's Catrian or Catrian. I had never heard of her yarn. She's in New Zealand. And I saw this kit and I was like, oh man, before I knew it, I had bought it. Yeah, I know, so much for my spending less, but I did have money set aside for stuffs, so, you know, it wasn't too impulsive, but what I have here are the main color, which is Foliage, is the name of it, and then the second color is, I think, Chewy Caramel, and then Wild Berry. And these look really good together. You can see. And I have made quite a bit of progress on it. Once I started it, I set my test knit down for just a few days to get this through the yoke, because this is the part that takes a lot of focus. And my test knit has been taking a ton of focus. I love it. It's a lot like paint by numbers, but it's a complicated paint by numbers. So I'll show it to you in a moment. But here is my progress on Flusy. Oh, here we go. Don't know, it's not showing so great. Here we go. So I'm not quite finished with the yoke, but boy, it is nice. Let's see if we can get up close here. Just a silk and cashmere. So it's a wool, silk, and cashmere. It's got a nice little sheen to it. I don't know if you can see that sheen. I might put in a photo here also that I take of it. It's really dark now. It's getting dark outside, so it's not very bright in here. I love the way these colors look. And you know, this is similar to the color I used in my Journey sweater way back when, before I was doing this podcast, but I probably worn it on the podcast last winter. But those are like the only two things I have that fit in a color similar to this. Yellow isn't something I use very often, this, even though I love this mustardy color. So this is the Traveler kit. That's the one I ordered. There's two other kits offered by Yarn Floozy. And actually, this is a big deal. This cardigan has dyers all over the place coming up with kits. I love watching that. I feel like all this attention is so well deserved for Libby, because she is a great designer, but on top of that, her little community and her Ravelry group is sweet. It is a good group. So I've been involved in that KAL, and it's not too late to jump in for it. A lot of people are digging through their stash too. It is a fingering weight. So I had 3 skeins for the main color and then 2 minis for these others. And let me just say, if you haven't already heard about it, this is not Fair Isle. This is not. This is mosaic knitting. It is all slip stitches. And I like that. I haven't done very much slip stitch knitting. I've done, well, some in Libby's patterns, a couple of her patterns, but that's it. And then I did a little in, I believe in this, Walk the Block. I think there was one where I did a little bit of slip stitching. Anyway, so it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of participation and neat colorway combinations. And let me just say, if you're going to do this, so many questions have been asked and answered about gauge. I've just never seen so much attention paid to proper gauge. A lot of knitters too saying, I quit knitting for myself, but because of this cardigan, I am getting back into it. And others saying, I've been afraid to try a sweater for myself, but I'm going to do it because of this cardigan. So they're really paying attention, like I should, to gauge and fit, because I don't want to make a mistake. And I'm just too doofy to usually care too much about it. But I did pay attention to all of that. And one of them brought my attention to the fact that you can favorite a comment in a forum. I've never done that before. So I favorited a couple of fit comments because I just thought they were helpful. And so I've learned some things. And one thing, another sweet knitter in that group made me think of was that I have very loose tension. I mean, guys, I am doing the body on size 1s. Very loose tension, and they're carbons at that. They're not metal needles. So they were saying that my pearls are often loose, and it's a knit back and forth type of cardigan. So she was saying combination knitting might help tighten up my pearl stitches. So I just tried a little on my swatch, part of my swatch, combination knitting, and I could see how, yes, it would tighten my pearls up. I didn't do it on this. I just felt like it was a little much on a fingering weight project. to do. And I also, the test knit I'm going to show you in a minute, there's no way I could try something new like combination knitting on that. It's a two-handed Fair Isle, and it's just too much going on. So I thought, I don't want to mess with my tension too much right now, but like the next worsted weight project I start, I'm definitely going to try combination knitting. So I've learned quite a bit through that group. Also, this is for the Floozy Knit Along, but it's also part of the Summer Sweater Knit Along, which is going on in Very Shannon's Ravelry group. It's just happening in Ravelry, so it's a smaller participation than normal, but the same really great people involved, and a lot of really neat projects. So I'm double dipping in both of those. And also for that group, I've been working on my, while I was waiting for my Floozy yarn to come in the mail, I've been working on, I think she's calling it Sea Glass and Driftwood, named after the colors she used. Annie Lupton has a sweater coming out. It'll be out in time for Rhinebeck, and I am almost finished with the front piece. Okay, this is just, guys, this is so great. Look at this. Can you believe I knit two-handed Fair Isle this fine? Fingering weight. Oh, I mean, isn't it glorious? I love this detail. Now, Annie Lupton is Boho Chic Fiber Co. on Instagram, and I'm going to have a link to that in the description box. I link, guys, I didn't even tell you anything about me. Okay, I'm Michelle. This is my So-Called Handmade Life. I'm Mamatronic on Ravelry, and I have my So-Called Handmade Life blog. On the blog and in the descriptions, I have detailed notes of all the stuff we talk about, or anything you recommend if I mention a book or a song or whatever. So anyway, can you see? And look how beautiful the back is. So gorgeous. I was so excited as I saw her working on this. I thought, oh, I'm going to do that sweater whenever that comes out. It came out sooner than I thought it would, but I was like, too bad. I'm just going to do it. So what I'm using is Stash I had on hand, so I'm using Stash. Stroll Tonal in Pearlescence. This is Stroll Tonal from Knit Picks, and this was a Knit Picks discontinued fingering weight. Hawthorne hand paints. I think it was called Knob Hill. So it's kind of a purpley pink. There's a little bit of like a lilac blue in there. And this is it balled up, but I might put in some photos here that look a little better, because you really can't see the color, the variance in color. I had 3 skeins of this. I got it like dirt cheap off a Knit Picks sale once before they discontinued it. So it was just enough to do this fingering weight sweater when joined with this. So I have the top. This is like to right about here. I have the top to do, and then I'll do the back piece. And then the sleeves are going to be easy. I can do those 2 at a time, and they're solid. So anyway, be looking on Annie's Instagram and everything, and Ravelry. She just had a really good sale too. I should have gotten this out sooner. It was like, she's turned 31, so it was like 31% off of all of her patterns. It may still be happening today. No, I won't get this out in time. Never mind. Let me show you a few things of Annie's that I've wanted to make. I don't know that I'd actually knit one of her patterns yet. I learned about her a while back. Oh, you know, before I really knew anything about her, there was an interweave pattern. I actually ordered Cascade 220 fingering for it, and I still have it. It's kind of a rusty orange brown color, and so this is what it is for. It's called Madame George. Ooh, let's get those out of the way. Here we go. the Madame George pullover. And then this one is really good for where I live. I have some, this is like a slub cotton. I don't have that. It's a great yarn. But I do have some interesting nubby tweedy-like cotton for this studio slub. And I'm just showing you some of my favorites. Carytown is one that Jenny from Handmade and Woolen knit, and you might remember seeing her make this. It's really nice. Her version was really great. I love this little dress, Nadia. It's like a little tunic or dress, kind of a jumper dress. Super cute. And something I know I'm going to do one day, I think it is worsted weight. It's called Wild Mystic, and Annie designed this shawl. But what I want to do is knit it in a larger weight yarn and make it like a throw or a bedspread, something to go over the center of a bed. So, but you can see as a shawl, it's great. So cute. So she's got a lot of really interesting designs, and she's putting them out constantly. All kinds of great new stuff. And then, as you can see, this spare aisle is, it's not hard. I am using two-handed, like Selbu traditional knitting, which I can knit continental or English, so it's not too hard for me, but I've never done it with something that was just all over color work. All right, so that's been fun. Following the chart is very much like paint by numbers, really interesting. It looks super complex, but it's really not. I mean, up till now, it's just been like a rectangle. So as long as you've got your chart printed up, and I do print it up large, and I even mark off the parts I'm repeating to make sure that I can easily not get lost. I wouldn't just look on my iPad for that one. So anyway, that's what I've been up to. So lots of busy knitting the last few weeks. Let's see. Oh, a few of you commented about the whole social media thing, kind of just like leftover talk last week about, I had read something Melanie from Braid and Tinker had said, and that I thought was just extremely succinct, well put, about how we have a sense of entitlement that the people we see online, they should bring us things we're interested in, only what we're interested in, and that we have the ability to just say, yeah, I don't like what you're doing, or I do, as though we can manipulate what they do, rather than just accept what they present and who they are, and either say, I want to watch this, or I don't want to watch this. I appreciated what she said because I wanted to see if I could see that in myself. Do I do that? I mean, obviously, I might watch something for a while and then say, I don't really like where this is going, and so I won't tune in anymore. But am I more apt to speak up with the anonymity of being online? I don't think so, but I have caught myself, and I usually say, wait a day. Before you say this, wait a day. Do you really want to get in on this back and forth that might be happening on, say, somebody's Instagram? I need to think, and so I give myself a little time to think it through before you impulse answer. And I have had a discussion with someone that, it was nuts. And my first impulse was to get right in there and argue. I know my tone. And when I'm teasing or when I'm being kind of conspiratorial like a friend, it may not always be taken that way. So it was a great lesson for me. And think about it before you say it. So Chaitanya begins with the C. said on my Instagram post about this podcast episode that she, in her personal life, she doesn't get to know people from diverse backgrounds very much with diverse interests. So it's sort of the same people and people very similar to herself every day. So she cherishes the online community because she's enriched by all these different people with their backgrounds and their interests. And she also finds that it produces empathy in her, which I can agree with completely. She also likes the non-knitting talk in podcasts. It does have that sit down and knit with a friend feel. I mean, nobody just talks about knitting usually. In fact, many friends who get together to knit, there's very little knitting talk. You're chatting about other things. And that is something I have. That's why I do that. I don't want to do tutorials. There is no tutorial I could do that hasn't already been done better. I don't have anything I want to teach, or there may be some things I know that I could teach somebody who hasn't learned it yet, but they're already doing it. Very Pink has already done it. So I felt like a hunger for a little more. Conversation-wise, like that time I was talking about where my world was very small. It still kind of is. And I was tired. I didn't have a lot of conversation that was not about sad things, hard things. And so I would watch knitting podcasts. And I just loved the little bits of somebody's family life. Vlogmas. I loved how people would invite you into their world. And Annette Kingsley left a comment saying that she likes to watch podcasts like this one because of the non-knitting talk. She enjoys being invited into somebody's life, which is kind of what it is. She kind of expressed how I felt, that I enjoyed being invited into people's life in Vlogmas. I liked seeing they would film the streets around where they live, or Christmas celebrations with their family. And one year I watched and I was sick, and so I was at home all day. I wasn't, in the doctor's offices and doing things like that, but I was completely physically just down. I mean, I had something, a cold. Maybe it was the flu. And I don't know, it kind of brightened my sick time. I was knitting and watching little vlogs and things. And the parts I enjoyed the most were the personal things, or people telling their thoughts about something, be it something they're making or just whatever around them, So I see I'm not the only one who feels that way, and I wanted more of it, which is one reason I did this. I wanted, even though I wanted to see more of other people doing that, I started doing it myself, inviting people into my life. Which sometimes doing what you want satisfies the desire a little, but because of the comment section, it does allow me to hear from other people, and I'm changed by what you tell me. Like, I'm just starting the Happiness Project. Begins with the C recommended this along with Sarah Jane and somebody else. I'm just starting it, but that wouldn't have happened had I not put out this podcast. So I'm going to talk a little more about some thoughts I've had on that in a minute. It's just another way of connecting. And Carmen was saying that in all this talk about social media, she had asked how I can keep up, and I told her in the last episode, 16, that I don't keep up. I mean, I have certain areas where I feel a responsibility and my own podcast comments, I want to keep up with those. I don't think I'll ever be a big deal. I don't see it ever being hard to do. I realize with some people, at one point, they just had to quit answering every comment because it would be impossible. I don't foresee that happening for me. My blog, I like to keep up with comments there, and will be posting more there. But she was saying it encouraged her to hear that she's not the only one, because she kind of feels almost a guilt. She watches and not responding. And then here you've got a podcast like mine where I'm saying, let me know what you think. And I'm really answering when somebody answers me. But, I mean, Carmen, how could you ever keep up with it all? It's just impossible. Hang on, I'm getting my phone blown up. Oh. College news from my son. Oh, his first day. A wall plug he plugged his phone into didn't work in his dorm room. So his phone died and it didn't wake him up. Well, he woke up early and then said, oh, I've got an hour. Went back to sleep, woke up late, rushing around. The bathroom sink leaked onto a bunch of his stuff that he had stored under the cabinet. He said, it wasn't a great day, but his actual classes seem interesting, and his professors seem really chill. So anyway, I had to see what he was saying there. Anyway, yeah, I'm all thrown off now because I'm thinking about my baby. I've been thinking about my children so much lately. It's crazy. Dreaming about them constantly. Remembering little moments with them, funny things. I've really been thinking about when my daughter was little a lot. So anyhow, sorry. I appreciated how many people commented on my Instagram. I joked that like I was going to sob and eat dark chocolate after dropping my son off at college. And so many of you commented, and some of you, I didn't realize your kids were the same age as my son, that your children were going into college that year, first time too. I really appreciated it. I didn't expect any answers. Usually if I don't have it hashtag knitters of Instagram, not many people see it, but that was sweet. And I wasn't alone. I didn't go home and sob. Actually, I was home like an hour, and my son texted me and said, I'm coming home, I'm bored. He wanted to watch TV because we didn't have his stand in for his TV yet. It's usually wall mounted, so he wanted a stand for his dorm room. So I saw him immediately. But all right, so Carmen, Poppy Pipkin also said the same thing. Not that she'll wait to comment to something someone says because she just wants to have this really well thought out, inspired answer, which I get. That is me. I'll watch a podcast. I cannot think of how many of Libby's podcasts, especially when she was audio, but I would be doing stuff. I would be driving or I would be walking, and I would think, oh, I'm going to go back to the Ravelry group and comment on that. And by the time I got home, it had gone away from me. Other times I watch something or I read something and I think, I'm gonna think on that and come back to it. But I always feel like, I don't know. It's just the same with answering your responses. When you comment here, I like read them immediately and I wait for like a week to really answer because I think I'm going to come up with something genius, and then all it is like, gee, thanks, So, I get that. I get that desire to comment, but then you say, no, I don't have time, or I don't have the perfect thing, to say. I'll just let someone else comment. What I've decided, if I have the time to comment, it doesn't stress me out, I just do it right away and make it brief. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. If I do it quickly, I'll do it. So, because if I don't, I'm never going to do it. I'll never think about going back. And if you, obviously people are watching this that don't respond. It's okay to not respond. I know you still watch. You got to pick and choose what you answer. I don't respond. I have certain people I watch all the time. I watch all their stuff. I don't respond every time. I wouldn't expect that of anyone. In fact, if nobody responds to me, and eventually it looks like nobody's watching even, I'll probably still do this as long as I would have, because I'm doing it mostly for me. I'm getting something out of it. I mean, it's not the same though if I'm not interacting with you guys, but I still think that the kind of realizing my thoughts, what's the word, having them take shape because I'm speaking them out loud, it's doing something for me. Mostly I'm enjoying the interaction with you guys. Just little things like a book suggestion or something. That's the main thing I'm getting from it. But if I didn't have that, I would still have that thinking things through by talking out loud. You know, it's always good. So anyway, I also could react to other people's thoughts in their podcasts forever. I mean, that's material forever because there's so many good ideas out there. I've got lots of stored up words. We had this guy come talk once to couples in our church, and he was saying how women say, 10,000 words a day or something like that, and men it's only 5,000, and sometimes it's overwhelming to men how much women talk and blah blah blah. So anyway, I always think about my 10,000 words or whatever. I do not get to say 10,000 words to living people. I say 10,000 words to animals, and that's about it. So you guys are helping me with that. I think it's Ada, Ada TZ. Hi, Ada. She said, talking about our responses to people via social media, how we can knee-jerk react and not sleep on it. She said she saw a documentary once on aggressive drivers, and they said that when driving, people are much more aggressive than they would be as pedestrians, because when you walk past someone, you make eye contact, and there's just some sort of observed etiquette. Whereas when you're driving, you really can't see the person well, you're not making eye contact, and people are just rude and more aggressive. And she was saying she feels it's the same with social media. Totally true, and that is a great example of how we treat it. Like we have the safety, the anonymity of our car around us. Just a little bit of distance, a soft, safe cushion, and we can react how we want. That's true. And I was thinking how we seem to view, I think, people who, I don't really know many people online who harass people on their, who troll their, whatever, their YouTube channel or their Instagram, but I know it happens. They feel emboldened by the fact that it's the internet, and these aren't neighbors and friends they're talking to. It's not people they have to sit next to in class. And it feels like boldness, but that's such a lie. It's revealing our cowardice. If we would say things to other people that online that we wouldn't have the courage to say if we were sitting next to them, we're revealing our cowardice. And there are times where that's not how it would be. She gave it the example of, say, a podcast where, like mine, where you're inviting someone into your home, and if someone really went to your home, they wouldn't sit on your couch across from you and say, no, I'm only here for the knitting talk. As you were speaking, that would be rude. If they were bored or didn't like it, they would probably be polite and then just not come back. But we don't do that with social media. I keep saying social media. I sound like a teacher. Social media. We don't do that because we feel, safe revealing what's on the inside of us. And we say things that we wouldn't have the courage to say in somebody's living room. So I just thought that was a great picture of how we are, and really good for parents. to talk to your kids about, would you do that if they were sitting in your living room? I don't know. I was thankful for that, Ada. And Braid and Tinker, Melanie, also stated that she's been thinking a lot about this idea of social media and friends on social media. You know, are they real relationships, or are they actually kind of false relationships that are causing us to be more isolated than ever because we don't have to go out and make real friendships? One of the things I'm reading in this, just in the intro, I just started the first chapter, so just in the intro, she's talking about happiness and things statistically speaking that happiness is always linked to our social circles, like good, healthy relationships, friendships. People who have friendships and good family relations tend to be happier, you know. So are these relationships that we're making online, are they actually keeping us from more fulfilling real life relationships? And anyway, Melanie hasn't come up with any firm decision on it. She's just kind of letting the thoughts simmer in her brain. But I shared with her something. I did a blog post maybe a year ago. After my grandmother passed away. It was about Andrea Mowry's Gather shawl. Not really about the shawl, but about the time when I was knitting on it. So if you looked on my so-called Handmade Life and Gather, you would find the post on it. Now, I'll link it here if I remember. Anyway, I had asked a group of young people that I teach if they thought friendships online were real friendships or not. And most of them felt like, somewhat, but not as deep as a real life in personal contact friendship, because, if you need something, those people can't help you. They can't be there for you. And I thought about how my grandmother had just passed away, and very few people in my peer group, my age group, really said anything of all the people I know. I know that a lot of them feel that, grandparents. I mean, some people don't really know their grandparents and they're not close to them. Whereas I was the opposite. I was super close to mine. My mother passed away and they were my link to her. So they became even closer to me. I think that we would have always been close anyway, but I think they were even closer for that reason. And they were my friends on top of that. We were actually friends. We had that kind of relationship. So once I was an adult, and my favorite people. So when she passed away, I was pretty devastated. It was not the way you want a loved one to pass away. She had no fear. She wasn't in pain. But I wasn't there, and I wanted to be there. And anyway, I had left to go home for the night. They assured me she was doing fine at the hospital. And then my phone the ringer was off. So when they tried to call me, I had the ringer down from being in the room because it was unsettling her. I thought I turned it back up, but I didn't. So that was I just felt terrible. I wasn't there immediately when she started having distress. I wasn't there when she died. I just felt, if anyone else told me that, I would think, that's just one of those weird things that happens, but you know how you're harder on yourself than other people. So I was feeling pretty low, and say the night of the funeral, I had gotten together a slideshow of photos for the funeral, and I had those photos on the computer, and I put them on my Instagram. I sent them to my phone and put them on my Instagram. And I just did it for me. But Maybe 2 or 3 people my age were at the funeral. My mother's friends, who are my friends too, showed up in droves. My grandmother had so many friends. The funeral home was full. It was packed. So it was great. And I wasn't hurt that more people that were my peers weren't there. I just noted it later because I got home and I was so drained, and sometime that night I picked up my phone and I click it on, I see Instagram, and there's all these messages of comfort from people like you guys. And a lot of you knew how close I was to my grandmother, which seemed to elude people in my real life. And I don't know. I remember still some of the comments, and I think they were heartfelt. And it was just really nice. It felt like a hug. It definitely did. And I thought to myself, this is real. The way I feel when I'm reading this is real. So there's definitely a place for online friends in my life. And I shared that with those young people that, we have an opportunity to touch people in a good way online. So I would have been okay without that, but boy, that meant a lot to me. And it was a lesson to me, like, I want to be that for other people when I can. So, thinking about relationships and happiness, like, how do I segue this? All these thoughts about our relationships and how we connect. Just a lot of things have been going through my head because today is day 3 of my husband and I being alone in our house, totally. Our son went to a school. We dropped my son off at school and I stayed and helped him get his room all set. See him. This is my sweetie. So he's my youngest, and I got him all, there was not much for me to do. The guys are just not the same about their dorm room as girls. Girls are like, they've got decor and bunting and throw pillows and all sorts of stuff going on. Neat chairs and cool lamps, and my son's just like, I just want more socks and sheets. That was it. So there was actually way more to get than that, but it wasn't fun stuff. It was like a toilet bowl brush, a bath mat. But I dropped him off. I took him and his roommate to eat lunch, and then dropped him off, and I was just like, this is going to be weird. Because I always felt like the time when my children were little, it's not that they have to be small, and it doesn't have to do with my being older and feeling in charge or more in control. I think what it was the fact that they were here a lot. In reading this book, The Happiness Project, talking about, she's trying to define, at first she's thinking, should I define happiness before I try to seek it? Or is it just something I know it when I feel it? She decided not to worry about all the definitions of happiness and just go for what she thinks it means to her. And I was thinking, when am I happy? When am I happiest? And I thought about times when I wasn't happy. And like I'd shared some of the negative thought life stuff. Those thoughts were there. They can be there even when you're happy. I mean, everything's not perfect in your life to be overall happy. Oftentimes, though, the more negative my thoughts were, it was times where I didn't feel as much happiness about certain areas of my life. But when I think, okay, when am I happiest? It has to do with family. I didn't realize that completely. I knew that when I was a young girl, I was very happy. Before my mother got sick, we spent a lot of time together. We did things that were enjoyable. The family would laugh. We ate supper together most nights. I remember a vacation or two that were, one especially, to the beach. That was just a fun vacation. My mother had already been sick, but she'd had cancer, but they thought it was all taken care of. And so, but then I look at other times I was happiest. It was after my children were born. I had this sense of purpose in taking care of them. And of course, their need for care is very obvious. My husband has needs. I mean, like, I can take care of him in lots of ways, but he's an adult. He's not like a baby needing obvious care. Something about that relationship with children, if you doubt your worth or your purpose, it's really good. That's a selfish thing. I didn't want to have children for that reason, but it was a byproduct of having them. I found a sense of purpose, like, I can do this. And then you hold the baby and pat them and they stop crying, and it's like, and what I do works, it feels so good. But when we were all together is when I was happy. So they were younger. At any range of the ages where we were all in the house together, I would say I was happy. Even though at times there were things I was not happy about that were happening, the family itself, I was happy about. Being a mother, always happy about it. Even if I wasn't sure I was doing a very good job, that's who I wanted to be, that's what I wanted. So, as I thought about that, I thought, well, I wonder how this will change, because I don't have children living in the house with me anymore. My husband and I went to the store yesterday, and our grocery cart was so empty. We left. I was like, oh my gosh, one trip into the house with these groceries, because it's just the two of us. We don't eat that much. And we're like, this is just weird. We miss them. We miss both of them. I mean, my daughter hasn't lived with us for years, but it's like, because my son's leaving, suddenly they're both my babies gone, and I think, will my happiness just be those feelings of family? Will that just be when I remember? Or will I just have to look forward to visits to see my daughter, or when my son is home, or when we're all together for a holiday? Because that's kind of pitiful. Of course not. There are other times in my life where the same things that happen within a family happen. It's similar. Like, I'm not saying this great. This is when stopping, erasing, and redoing comes in handy. What is it about the family being together that made me happy, besides the fact that these are the people I love the most in the world? It's that we all have a common goal. We love one another. We want to take care of each other. And it's not always the case. I mean, right? Children are learning, but we have our roles. We work together. That's what I like. And so there are lots of times I'm not with my family, but I get that feeling of working together for a common goal. That is my happy place. Like, say, the mission trip, any of them that I've been on, or doing something with purpose, like after the Hurricane Harvey, when we went in groups to work on people's homes. It was hard, and even working to clear out our garage, if I wasn't by myself working together with other people, it's just a good feeling. I like doing something that works with other people. Let me see how I said it here. I was and am always happy when I am part of something big, meaningful, where it's working because we work together. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I just said. something bigger than me, meaningful, where we're working together. And I don't know what that means. Like, how will I find that? I volunteer at BSF. That's going to be something. That is something. And I teach that Bible study class of young people. Those are all examples of that. And really, that's 3 days a week. That's and then I prepare throughout the week. So if that was all, that would be fine. I still have my husband. I still have my animals. My children still exist. But I do have a little more time on my hands. And, you know, maybe my question for you guys for next week is, what should I do with myself? And don't tell me to go suck an egg. I've thought of a lot of things, though. Like, everybody's and their brother is designing now. But there are some things I've wanted to make. And this is the time, you know. I've been wanting to use my camera again for something besides knitting photos. I just really didn't have a lot of time. And so I would rush out and take some pictures of some knitting. But my time to myself was usually knitting while watching TV with a family member for years, late at night. So, yeah, there's time for that. There's time to learn some editing skills, to write more. So, I don't know. All these different things are running around in my head. And I thought, how do they fit into that prescription for happiness that I kind of have in my head? It being something bigger than me, meaningful, where people are working together. And I thought about, like, this podcast. So imperfect and silly at times. But you guys, there's a sense of working together in that we talk back and forth, and we learn from each other. I learn from, if you have a podcast, I learn from it. I learn from the things you say, the things I might see on your Instagram. So anyway, I enjoy that, and whatever I do, whatever I end up doing with my free time, even if it's just doing the things I'm doing and just scan those daggum photos I've had forever, for the year, that would be like a total accomplishment, completely. But just in this introduction to Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project, she says, I wanted to change my life without changing my life by finding more happiness in my own kitchen. So she wasn't trying to do some, soul-searching trip where she leaves it all and rushes off to India. She wanted this to be more practical for the average person. And then she said, which I can identify with, this is the way I think. She says, though I didn't recognize this immediately, I started my happiness project because I wanted to prepare. I was a very fortunate person, but the wheel would turn. One dark night, my phone was going to ring. I didn't want to wait for a crisis to remake my life. Well, I'm not really trying to remake my life, but I do feel like the idea of sucking the juice out of it, getting what you can out of your life and where you're at. I like that idea. I don't want it to pass me in a haze of knitting projects and Netflix seasons I've watched. I want to savor this time, which doesn't seem normal since my kids aren't here, and that's just always been. I love being a mom. That's like, I don't see what could ever top it. And maybe nothing will, but definitely there'll be things to savor now. So as I think about that, I appreciated her saying that it just needed to be something she could do in her own kitchen, not, requiring, I mean, even if I did go back to school, I don't think you have to go back to school or do something drastic or expensive to savor your life. So, I don't know. It's on my mind, and I'm interested to see what I actually get from the actual book when I start it. I finished the sagas and then I started rereading the Expanse series. That's why I'm not so far on this, because I saw that book 6 was already out and book 7 is going to be out in November. And I was like, oh my gosh, I read that at night. I've forgotten so much. I started back with book 2. The Expanse is, well, there's a sci-fi show and it's good, but the books are better. They are really good if you like science fiction, and it's a series, so there's a lot of them now. There's going to be 7 of them. Really easy reading, like makes me think of Joss Whedon kind of screenplay, easy reading. There's language in them, though, I will tell you that. There's some language. There's a couple of characters that use a lot of language. If that's, a deal breaker for you, you'd want to know. So let me tell you about another couple of KALs I'm going to be joining. The Farmer's Daughter Fiber is working with Caitlin Hunter to do the Ramblin' Rhinebeck KAL. Oh, and you've probably seen the image of, oh, it's so cute. I gotta get it. Hang on. I think Caitlin Hunter designed this. It's I really love knitting. So funny. She, so it's any of her sweaters, like the Rhinebeck sweater, but you could also do a hat. And here's the thing, guys, I still have to do sleeves on my Sunset Highway by Caitlin Hunter, and then I've got the Guthrie pattern waiting, but not in Farmer's Daughter Fiber. That's other stuff, Spin Cycle and Knit Picks. So one thing I've been looking at online when there's updates on the Farmer's Daughter Fiber website, they'll have something on Instagram, is this Sukapi fiber. It is Rambouillet, and it's from Montana and Wyoming. And these colors make me think of my trip to Wyoming. We didn't go to Montana. We'll probably do it next time we go to Wyoming. We might hike the Tetons again. It's just a slightly different area, but look at these beautiful colors. I decided to do a hat because that's something I can do right now. This is going to be the cardamom coffee hat. Let me show you how it looks. It called for Tosh Merino Light, which is a single. It's a fingering weight single, but it's merino, really soft yarn. And so I'm thinking, I didn't know when I ordered what Rambouillet even felt like. I mean, I've heard it's a really nice quality wool. I hear about Cormo and Rambouillet a lot. I've never touched either. But this, actually, I do think, and when I was in Wyoming, I got a little bit of Rambouillet for something else, but it wasn't the right amount for this. And so I thought, in singles and color work, how does that work out? Because usually when I knit a color work sweater, I use, something like what I'm using for this driftwood and sea glass. So I wasn't sure, but I went ahead and ordered them because I just thought these colors looked really good together. Very earthy colors. I like these colors. So I was just going to do it and try it, but I asked the question on Instagram, and several of you said, oh no, it'll work, it'll look great. So, and I also don't have a problem with itchy wool bothering I have a hat in Peace Fleece that's super woolly, but this actually isn't itchy. I don't think I'll have a problem with that at all. It's very soft. If you can see, let's see if you can see kind of the texture of it. So it's this is how you say it. Sukapi, I think is how you say it. And it's a Native American word. I don't remember what that word means. But she had said it on her Instagram. And I had remembered thinking, oh, I really want to try that yarn one day. So I'm excited to be part of her Rambling Rhinebeck KAL with Caitlin Hunter. And I can also enter this hat into Andrea Jimenez's Any Hat KAL, which I did last year. I did like 2 hats for it, maybe 3. I want to do this one for both, so I'll probably do it first. But Andrea has several patterns, and she has one for a bulky yarn that let me find it, that she has, she's got one for a messy bun hat is what it is, but you know, there's a hole where you can pull your bun out or your ponytail, which I thought was really helpful for me with all the hair and running. Oh, Buckalope was the one I did last year. That was a fun hat. I really could stand to have another one. I have the yarn from Buckaloo View I could use for this or for something else. I don't know if you can see this, that great big bulky cable. It knits up super fast. Another one that I want to do, it's her spruce pine. It's a ribbed hat, but it's in super bulky. And I actually have a Tweety super bulky Lion brand, and I got it to either knit the messy bun beanie or something that I could feel comfortable wearing to run in. I didn't want to, you know, use the finest of wools and then get it all funky and sweaty. And then if I did wash it a lot, even hand washing, I didn't want to tear up a really nice, expensive wool, but I wouldn't feel bad doing it with Lion brand. So that's something I want to do too. I don't know if I'll get both of those done in time for the Any Hat KAL, but I just wanted to show you Andrea's, a couple of her patterns. She has several great hat patterns, and she has a really pretty shawl pattern out now. So I'm going to do Cardamom Coffee for the Any Hat KAL and the Ramblin' Rhinebeck. And I'll have links to all of those. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to talk to you guys about. And then I'm just going to let you go because my husband's home, and now we're going to have our sad, lonely, only 2 of us supper together. Not really. It actually means we can eat foods we like that don't always appeal to younger people. So that's fine. I will tell you, you know how I told you I was going to do a rally class, and then they made a mistake with the dates, and I actually went to the last class, and I was not doing too bad with my dog? Well, I might get some footage of me working with her. Oh, she'll be terrible, I bet, though. If my husband tries to film it, she'll probably act up in front of it. But the trainer is really good, and she had me try something, and I feel like it's a breakthrough to get us from a place where like I'm really having a yank on that leash. And she suggested the dog is using it as a crutch. Like she's just doing whatever and expecting me to yank her back in place. So she said, you need a loose leash, which I know, but I don't know how to get there because she just takes off, yanks me when we go on a walk. And she can be kind of rough with the dogs, like, and I'm okay with that, with a big, aggressive dog. But she had said, you know, take a long leash and just loop it over your shoulder and start doing your work that you would normally do with the leash tight in hand. Drape it over your shoulder and make the dog follow you and watch you. And when they start to veer away, you know, sure, give the choke chain a good yank, but then make it loose again. And at first I was having to do a lot of the yanking, but then she kind of got the idea and she started to really watch where I went. Another thing, I felt like her head was supposed to be kind of even with my legs because she's supposed to be at heel, like I guess at my heels is what I thought. But the trainer said it's okay if her shoulder is even, you know, with my legs. So she seemed to be getting a little far ahead of me, but actually it wasn't too bad. So when I put the leash, actually it was too small to even drape around me, so I just let it drag in the class and walked. She did really good. She really didn't do bad walking with me. You know, when I go to make a left turn, I make it really exaggerated, you know, with my legs so that she kind of backs out of my way and I don't trip over her. And she learns that way. So that evening, I didn't know what would happen. I usually put a halty on her, and that's like a harness thing you put on your dog and it attaches to the choke chain in the leash, it won't allow them to walk ahead of you. If they start to move ahead of you, their head turns to the side and they can't see, so they don't walk ahead of you. Well, she's gotten to where, okay, she can't walk ahead of me, so instead she drags way behind and wants me to drag her. She's literally at times laying on the ground so that I would have to pull her. And it's not because she's done with the walk. She wants me to take the halty off of her. She doesn't like wearing it. So, what a diva. So, after that class where I let the leash go or made it loose, I said, okay, I'm not going to let her off leash in public, but I did keep a loose leash. And I just yanked a few times really hard, both hands. Was a little rougher than normal with her, but she really did do well on a loose leash. I wasn't being, my shoulder wasn't being pulled out of place. So anyway, that was kind of good. I thought there was a breakthrough. The trainer was talking about the Kohler method, and I had read a book by that author years ago, before any of these animals I own were born. And he was like a Hollywood dog trainer, and he sort of revolutionized dog training. And that's what she was saying. And as she talked about him, I realized, yeah, I read one of his books, because he would take like a 20-foot lead and just start walking with the dog. And of course, the dog goes off on their own direction, and you just walk the other way. And eventually this dog comes to the end of the rope, and he yanks him back in place, and they don't like that feeling. So they learn to watch you and stay close to you. I just never did get it to work from the lab I had then. So, well, actually, it worked in a weird way. Like, he liked the pulling of the leash, but I never could get him to walk with a loose leash beside me. And then one day we go to a dog park where he can finally be free, and I was like, oh my gosh, go be free. Because he was huge. He was over 100 pounds, and he could drag anyone. He wouldn't run away. He walked right beside me at perfect heel, with his nose sniffing the leash in my pocket, because he wanted that leash. That's what he knew. Never seen a dog walk off lead so perfectly the entire time we were there. And he would whimper too. He wanted that leash. He wanted to drag me with the leash, like that was his duty. So anyway, that's probably not too interesting for you guys, but if you're interested, I will link the Kohler method book. It's interesting if you like to home train your dog. You really could learn some things from it. So, yeah, I don't have a question. What should I do with myself now, guys? That's my question. I realized that having that opportunity is a luxury. A lot of people would have to have already been working. Even if they did help care for elderly relatives, the minute they were not needed there, they would need to be working. And that may happen. It may. I don't think that this is like my right. I understand that having a little free time to pursue something that interests me, to go back to school if I want, that kind of thing is totally a luxury. And I can say that part of the reason I have that opportunity is because we do live very frugally, and we live on the bad side of town. But I don't want to laze around. And I do believe that working at something, whether it's volunteer work, something that's part of something good, even if it isn't a career, doesn't make money, I think it's just as valuable, and I don't think I'll ever regret being part of things like that, as long as my family has what it needs. I'll never regret doing work of any sort that is not career focused, but is just for the good of something. Even sometimes if it's just for the good of me. So I did want to state that, though, because I know not everybody's in a position like that, and I may not always be in that position. It's kind of like she said in that book, being prepared. The wheel is turning, and the time to get ready for, say, hard times and how you're going to deal with it and find joy is while it's easy and you have the time to think about it. I definitely agree. And this is probably a really good time to do that for me. So, yeah, if you have any thoughts about anything I've said in this episode, leave a comment. Bye.